as you probably already know, the Easy Preset system is not just a bunch of conventional presets that you can apply to your images. It is a set of component presets which you can compose very flexibly to create your own presets. And the way this works is by following a simple workflow down the order in this presets panel. Now you have 15 new groups here, 12 of which comprise the EPS workflow. And let's go through these groups quickly here, and I'm going to tell you how to use them and what's inside each group. Now the first one, called Special Commands, has all kinds of stuff that you probably don't use that often, except for the very first command, which is Reset All. Now if you click that, all your settings of your image will be zeroed out, so they will be set to the default setting that Lightroom has for this file. The remaining here are for auto tone and auto black and white, and for resetting graduated filters, and we're going to get to these later on. The most important one is this first one, Reset All. Now the actual workflow starts with this folder called 01 Dynamic Range, and if you open that, you're going to see a bunch of presets, and you already see the basic idea behind the Easy Preset system. If you look at the navigator window up here, where you see the preview of our image, and I hover the mouse over one of the presets, I get a preview of this preset. So I see what the image would look like if I applied this particular preset to the image. And that is the basic idea behind the Easy Preset system, because you can now simply move your mouse over these presets here, look at the preview window, and then at any point where you like what you see, you can just click on the preset to apply it to your image. In this particular case, for the dynamic range, we also have two additional presets down here, one to recover the shadows and one to recover the highlights. And if I hover over these, you can see the effect also, but I don't need to apply these to this particular image now. So once you've selected one of these presets, you're done with this particular step. You can close the group and go to the next group. And here it's the same principle. This is the contrast group. So the presets in this group raise or lower the contrast. You can also see that wherever this is applicable, we have this simple scale indicator to the right of the preset name, which means that if you go to the top, you will get more contrast. The indicator here on the scale moves to the right, and it has a plus sign in the parenthesis. And if you move down, the contrast will be lowered, indicated by the minus sign here. So again, I'm hovering over these presets, going from top to bottom. I'm just looking at the navigator window here, so I'm not bothered with which particular preset I'm going to select here, and I'm certainly not looking at the right side where all the settings are, but I'm just looking here at the navigator window, and I simply click on the preset where I think that the preview looks nice. The next group is the exposure group, and that follows the same principle. If you move down, the exposure is lowered. If you move up, the exposure is raised. And the exposure is increased or decreased by a third of a stop between each pair of presets in this group. And you can simply choose one. I'll stay with the zero exposure. So this is the default exposure. I didn't actually change anything by clicking on it. I could also have just ignored this group completely to have the same effect. But just for the sake of it, let's click on it. And you also see this little arrow sign, or the less than character at the end of this preset. And this means that this is the default preset, which is going to zero out all the settings that are made in this preset group. If we go back one group, you can see that we've got this in the contrast group too. So the 0 contrast is the default setting here. For the dynamic range, we have a 0 setting. So wherever this is applicable, wherever we have a scale or we can reset the settings, which is the case for all of these groups, we have one setting that has this arrow character to the right of it. So I'm going to further down the order of the groups in the workflow. Next is the tone tuning group, and here we have different tone curves, and you can read the names. We can recover highlights, we can raise highlight contrast, shadow contrast, mid-tone contrast, all these things. All these are very subtle changes. And again, I'm just looking at this preview here. I'm not actually looking at the presets, and I'm moving my mouse up and down, and I'm picking the preset that suits me best, which in this case happens to be raise mid-tone contrast. I close the group and I move on to the details group. Same principle. I'm choosing one. I'm adding a bit of detail to the image. And then we get to a block of groups, 6A to 6D, which have to do with the color of the image. The first one is the color temperature. And there are two presets here at the top, two special presets. One which lets Lightroom determine automatically which white balance it should set for this image. And the second one is to reset the white balance to the value as it was set by the camera when the photo was shot. The settings below just simply increase or decrease the color temperature, so it makes the image warmer or cooler. And again, I'm just hovering over these, and I'm picking the one that I like best. I close the group. I move on to the color boost group here. Same principle. Just picking one by looking at the preview. The next one is the color effects group. Now this is a bit complicated. This is the presets in this group actually change the hue, saturation and lightness of different colors specifically. So there's no up and down here, really. You just move your mouse over the presets up and down and do the same thing again. Just stop where you like it. In this case, I think raising the blue tones, the tones around the blue color here in this image works quite nicely. And so I'm going to pick that. We have boost presets in this group, mute presets. So these actually tone down any particular range of colors. We have specific boost groups here in this color scenic section that are specifically targeted to landscape photos, where we boost the orange, blue, yellow, for example, for night shots and night landscapes, or yellow, green, blue. And then we have some presets which actually remove colors more or less from the image. For example, the yellow out presets are good for removing a yellow cast on the walls if you have an interior shot. This happens often that the walls get a bit yellowish, and you can remove this with these presets. The folder 6D is for black and white. It's nothing spectacular in here, just a few basic presets. Now black and white photography, or the editing, the post-processing of black and white images is quite specific. So I haven't added a whole lot of presets here right now. Maybe there will be more presets in this group later on. But I'm not going to turn this into a black and white image, so I'm just going to move on to the effects folder here. And this basically only has a vignette effect in it right now. So from the very bottom preset, which removes any vignette, all the way up to a very strong vignette. And I actually like vignettes in my photos, so I'm going to pick a rather subtle one towards the end or the bottom of this group, and I'm done with this too. Group 8 has all kinds of corrections, corrections of lens distortion, straighten lines. So this uses the lens correction functions and the upright functions in Lightroom to automatically correct a bunch of different things that your camera and your lens can do to your image. Now, if you pick one of these, the performance of Lightroom is usually going to go down. So I'm not picking any of these, but you can see by the previews here, for example, straighten lines, it really makes a difference. It tries to straighten out the lines. Now in this case, we have more or less a landscape shot. So it tries to get the horizon straight probably, but I'm not going to pick any of these for now. And the final folder in this EPS workflow is the noise reduction and sharpening folder. And in this folder, you can do basically three things. You can reduce the noise, sharpen your image, and if you absolutely need to, you can also add grain. So if you're a fan of old black and white grainy photos, these are the controls where you can add them. Personally, I don't like too much grain in my photos, so I use these very rarely. And then starting with this preset EPS 9.10, where it says Sharp NR off, you get a bunch of presets which get increasingly stronger as you go to the top, all the way from turning off all sharpening and noise reduction, which is this preset here, all the way up to images with very high noise in them. So if you have an interior image, for example, where you boosted up the ISO settings very high, you may choose one of these. If you have an image with a lower ISO setting shot at a normal shutter speed, you probably should use one of these here. Now you should actually, let me close this gradient tool here. You should actually zoom in pretty closely. Oops. Okay. Sorry. To verify that this actually worked. Now this shot doesn't have a lot of noise, but you get the idea. The more noise you have, the further up you go with these presets. Now noise and sharpening do vary quite a lot from image to image. So the right amount of sharpening and noise reduction is probably not covered by these presets here. So zoom in to 100%, choose the preset, go from bottom to top, and where you think that you have a nice balance of noise and sharpening, you can use this preset, and if it doesn't really work, you can tweak these settings, and I will show you this in a different video. You can go to the details tab here, where you've got the detailed sliders for these settings here. Okay, so this completes the easy preset system workflow. We've gone from group 1 to group 9, and we've actually created our own preset now. And if I show you the before and after, the effect is quite impressive, I think.